I was a runner. I ran from relationships, intimacy, responsibility because I was scared. And I think the solution is like, hey, instead of like calling men toxic,
Hmm.
let's give them an opportunity to speak and express themselves. But if I, as a father, if I don't raise my son that way to say, hey, look, it's okay to be afraid, it's okay to feel anxious, it's okay to feel stress, I'm going to teach you how to step into it in spite of your fear, because you can do it and you're capable. I'm going to teach you how to be a strong man. I'm not going to teach you not to cry. I'm
Mm.
not going to teach you just to be stoic. I'm not going to teach you to be performative and fake it and put on a mask your whole life. I'm going to teach you to feel it and still get out there on the stage, because that's what strong men do.
Welcome to the Spiritual Forum, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I'm looking forward to this conversation I'm going to have today with my guests. It is such an important conversation. Just want to remind you to check out my website, thespiritualforum.org. There you'll learn about my upcoming October retreat, which is called Homo Ahimsa Rising. It's about rising in consciousness to from Homo sapiens to a more embodied oneness consciousness. We are kind and loving to all beings on the planet, kind of consciousness. And you can learn more about that there, as well as subscribe to my newsletter and also check out all my podcasts there. So let me introduce you to my guest. His name is Robert Joseph, and he is the founder of Raised by Men, devoted to guiding men into authentic manhood rooted in faith, integrity, and Christ centered values. Using ancient wisdom, scripture, and embodiment practices, Robert creates spaces for deep brotherhood, personal healing, and spiritual growth, helping men to embody their highest calling as protectors, providers, and servants of God. From wilderness retreats to brotherhood circles to global impact partnerships, Raised by Men exists to awaken men to their purpose and deepen their responsibility to themselves, their family, and the world. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. As we talked before we started recording, I have done a few podcasts about the feminine energy and awakening that and all of that. And I've had people come on to talk about motherhood and mother-daughter experiences. And I'm like, we've got to talk about men. It's so important to talk about men. I think it's one of the most important things happening on the planet right now. So I'm so excited that you're doing this work. But before we get into your work, I'd like to ask you a few rapid fire questions so we can get to know you just a little bit better. Are you up for that?
Sure. Let's go.
Okay. If you could just pick one person who inspired you in your life, and I know there's lots, but whoever comes to mind now, who would that be and why?
My wife, who we just happened to get married yesterday. Funny
Really?
enough. Yeah, we got married yesterday, but we know each other for a while. And we were friends first for about 2 years, and then we got together romantically, and things moved pretty quickly. Um, the reason she inspires me so much is because she has an unshakable relationship with God. And Carol, my feeling is we feel our greatest proof of God is through each other, right? It's unfathomable to try to look up and figure out, right, what's going on above us or around us. But when we really find a kind-hearted person that has no uncertainty in their relationship, that actually embodies godliness 24/7, that changes you alchemically. I think it changes you cellularly, and that's what she's done for me since I met her.
Wow. Sounds like you married a good one.
I'm a very lucky
Congratulations.
man.
You
Thank you.
are. You are to have that inspiration around you all the time. That's
Yes,
amazing.
yes.
Lucky you. So you also talk about in your organization and what you're doing, you talk about Christ consciousness, you talk about Christ-centered values. Can you tell me how you define Christ consciousness?
Yeah, I don't. When I talk about Christ, I don't necessarily talk about it in a secular sense, right? Because I think that a lot of us, including myself, have a complicated relationship with religion. And sometimes when you go to, say Christianity in this case, a lot of people are like, you know what, I don't want to hear it. Right. And I get that because we're relying on other men and women's interpretation of God from thousands of years ago. So to me, Christ consciousness is just embodying. How do we embody Christ like virtues within us? How do we become Christ like through heart centered values?
Okay, and how would you I mean, what would Christ like look like other than
Well,
your wife?
other than my wife, yeah. Well, I think when it comes to being a man or a woman, but in this case, Jesus, there's really undeniable proof that he's walked this earth and he was crucified, and then of course the resurrection is what separates a lot of the religions. But just the fact that he lived this, almost every religion in the world agrees that he lived this incredibly virtuous prophetic life, right? Many would say a perfect life. And to me, when I look at the epitome of masculinity, it is through the figure that is Christ, right? Whether it's literal or symbolic, as men, we have someone that we could look up to who actually had this divine relationship with God. Now, whether you believe he was God or not, to me is irrelevant. It's more about what did he come to do? And I believe he came here to show us how to live a God-like, purposeful life, right? So for me, it is what divine masculinity actually is. We can't just throw these words around. We need an example. Otherwise, we're trying to go through this monotheistic view of God and trying to connect, like I said, to something so grandiose that's very hard to connect. So this intermediary, in this case, this divine masculine man who embodied masculinity and femininity perfect, the lion and the lamb, is a great resource to look up to follow. And I do men's work, right? Jesus had a men's group with 12 disciples, right? Ironically. And he had these beautiful woman followers. So again, there's some the religious aspects that we could use as a template, but the reality is like, how do we awaken the God within us? How do we awaken that divinity within us? How do we become supernatural and not just victims to our own humanness, right?
I'm so with you there. We have no idea who we really are, truly at the depth of our being. And I've always said that Jesus said so many times, "Follow me, follow me, follow me." And that small statement that he said repeatedly is often overlooked. He was showing us how to live, walking through every aspect of his life, the joys and the difficulties, showing us how to do it. And instead, we're like, oh, we worship you. It's like,
Yes.
why don't we just follow him like what he asked us to do?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. And we may have covered this already, but if you're in an elevator and someone had to say, what are you up to? What is your message on this planet? What would you say?
Ooh. There's a many answers to that, but I would say right now, I would say, Carol, that everything not of love is nonsense. Choose only love in every instance and every circumstance.
Okay, so I think you need a bumper sticker that says, everything that is not love is nonsense.
Maybe that's where I saw it. Maybe it's not as original as I thought it was.
I like it. I like you always hear things like, well, the opposite of love is fear. It's like, I like that. Anything that's not love is nonsense. So would you want
Yeah.
to live a loving life or a nonsensical one? You
Right?
choose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So let's dive into your spiritual awakening because something took you from the corporate world, the on paper living the life, the perfect life, to what you are doing now. It's a very common story to people who have these spiritual awakenings, but I think people really learn through stories. So can you let us know what happened in your life for you to move away from the life you had before into the one that you're living now?
Yeah, sure. So my story is kind of one of disassociation, right? So I think when people have trauma, and I know this is a buzzword these days, but when we go through things as a child, right? Um, People react to them differently. Some people completely disconnect from their families. Some people have addictions. Some people have anxiety, depression. My thing was just total disassociation. I have zero memory of my childhood, right? And when I hit 40, I think Carl Jung said life begins for a man at 40, which I completely agree with, right? Because death becomes more imminent. You're now midlife. You start thinking about things differently. And I began to reflect on my life, and I'm like, why am I having so many troubles in relationships? Why am I having issues with my sexuality? Right? Why am I not really happy? Why do I travel the world, but I'm not really there? I'm not really taking in the moment. I'm never present, never happy, never excited, but I'm functional, right? And then at 40, I'm like, maybe I need therapy. Never thought about it. And then I went to therapy and I realized immediately I've needed therapy my whole life, right? And then I joined men's groups because I didn't realize it, but I was spending most of my time with women. Women were my hobby, women were my social life, women were my outlet. And I didn't have really a brotherhood. So I started doing men's work. I started going more inward into the inner work, spending more time in prayer, contemplation. I went into solitude for 7 months in nature. I did some plant medicine, and the memories flooded back.
Mm.
Okay. Now, these weren't just, sort of logical memories that came back, they were more visceral, bodily memories. And I experienced a surge of emotional release that was happening almost constantly through what some people would call cryers, involuntary movements in my body, right? Constantly shaking. My body was trying to recalibrate and release. I would do emotional body work with my therapist who did something called orgonomy from Wilmer Reich, which was invasive body therapy, where he would press very hard on your organs and energy centers, and I'd climb up the walls, right? And I'm like, where is this emotion coming from? So the visceral memories told me, like, hey, when you talked about your childhood and you thought everything was okay and you were out there performing, making money in sales and pretending that everything's good, it wasn't. And
Mm.
now you have to face it. So this was the beginning of the awakening, right? And it was years and years and years of just shedding layers, releasing trapped energy until I got to a point where honestly I'm still there, but I feel like I'm coming out of it, where there's an inner peace beginning to come through my body. And then on the other side of that is, oh, God is not arbitrary. I feel him. I speak to him. I connect with him because my channel's clear. Before there was so much noise, right? I couldn't get the signal. And now
Mhm.
that the noise has left my energy centers for the most part, is leaving my body, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. My intuition is alive. My heart is open. My mind is clear. And I'm feeling more of that spiritual essence within myself.
Did you have any sense of God growing up? I know you didn't remember your childhood, but was this like brand new to you, or did you have some sort of religious upbringing at all?
I was an all boys Catholic school, for
Okay.
most of my life, but I rebelled against that because it didn't feel right to me. So I had some sort of baseline. They were trying, you know. I was doing the confessions and saying the 50 Hail Marys, so I wasn't a sinner, you know. I was memorizing the prayers, but it felt in some way inauthentic. I don't think I would ask the priest that would teach us. I would ask them some tough questions, and they weren't ever able to give me an answer outside the book. So I was always curious. I was always faithful, but I was never satisfied.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, there's something about just like doing it, and then the other part is just experiencing it. And the experience is something that's completely different. And a lot of religious people never really have that experience.
Mm,
Yeah.
great point.
Do you
Great
have
point.
any sense about why you chose to like go out into the woods on your own and actually seek help and seek this awakening that seemed to be knocking on your door? Because so many people are still on the hamster wheel. So many people are still doing what looks amazing on paper and are living unfulfilled lives, but you made a different choice. Was it just kinda hitting rock bottom?
Yeah, great question. I think it is partly hitting rock bottom and being dissatisfied with my life's results, right? Because as a man, I mean, on paper, a lot of people would say, hey, you date beautiful women, you make a lot of money, you own some assets, you have this freedom. But I'm like, yeah, but I'm alone all the time, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong with being alone when it's like, how do I say, a productive alone? Like,
Uh-huh.
hey, I'm gonna go out to the woods and pray and meditate. But when you're alone and you don't necessarily want to be alone, then you can be lonely, right? And over time, I was just sort of like, I see the world keeps spinning, and I feel kind of stuck. I'm experiencing life, but I'm not sharing life with anybody. I can only love an animal up to this point, 40 years old. Never loved a human. I think maybe I'm doing something wrong. I think there's something I'm missing out on. All my friends are having families. I'm not, and that's okay, but I think I want it deep down, right? So there was this feeling of this can't be it. What's the next chapter? I've done and God said to me literally, you've done everything you possibly could do on your own, even from a growth standpoint. There's nothing you've turned over every single stone. If you want to grow to the next level, you have to be in a relationship. You have to look your fears in the eyes, and you've been afraid of women, and you've been afraid of intimacy for a long time for very good reasons, right? Because I had my own bouts with, sexual, I don't call it abuse, but I've had my sexual episodes as a child, right? And that made me terrified
Mm.
of experiencing real intimacy. But I knew that in order for me to reach my potential as a man, that I had to face that fear and not run away.
So you've mentioned as a man, so this is why you're doing men's work now. How did that start happening? That you went from this awakening to now I'm going to help other men with this awakening? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's where I am now. But at the time, I joined because I needed a brotherhood. I wanted to be surrounded by strong men. I think the quick story on this is I ran into a friend at a Marianne Williamson event. You know Marianne
Okay,
Williamson?
sure.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I see a guy about 5 pews in front of me because it was in church in Manhattan. And I go on Facebook and I go, is that you, Mike? I went to high school with him. I go, what are you doing here? I thought I was the only single straight guy at a Marianne Williamson event. He goes, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm here for the women. Yeah. So he goes, let's have a beer afterwards. We have a beer. And I go, what have you been up to? And he goes, I've been doing men's work. I go, what's that? He goes, I'll tell you what, there's an event this weekend. Trust me. Don't ask any questions. Just come up with me. And I go, why not? So I get in the car. We go up to Connecticut. And I get there, and there's about 30 men sitting around a fire in a barn. And I was terrified because they were talking about real stuff. And some of them were real good at talking about real stuff. They weren't shy. And I'm over here going, I hope they don't look me in the eye. And I'm a sales guy, so I'm like, I'll talk my way out of it, but I feel like these guys could see right through you. You know what I mean, Carol?
I get
So,
it.
so yeah. And of course, they were like, I think they let me off the hook that weekend. I just tried to get through the weekend because I wasn't ready to go there. But I left there saying, I need this. I didn't know there was
Uh-huh.
men like this that existed. And when I say that for your audience too, because I don't know if a lot of women know that men like this exist. Vulnerable, strong,
Yeah.
leaders, compassionate, caring, right? I was like, I never met a man like this in my life, and I'm 41, 42 years old. So I left that weekend and I was like, I'm going to prepare myself a little for this. And then I'm going back and I'm going to find the men's group and I'm going to join it and I'm going to put myself out there.
Well, good for you. I have 3 daughters, and they're all married now to wonderful men, but boy, I remember them going through the whole dating scene and saying, "There's no men out there, they're all boys, and
Yeah.
there's no men out there," and, it was really hard. So there is a lot going on, I think, in our culture that is missing for the raising of men. I don't know exactly what it is and how it happens, but I'm all for men, rising up in their own sense of self and fully embodying the divine masculine. And so let's talk about that. What does that look like? And what is that from your perspective? And why is there a gap?
Mm. Whew, where do we start? I think divine masculinity is having true power, right? Men talk about power all the time, but power under God's authority. Because we can't use the word divine lightly. It's these words in the spiritual community are thrown around so lightly, right? The rise of the divine feminine, the rise of this,
Yeah,
right?
it
And
is.
it's like, yeah, but spirituality has to be grounded. Real spirituality is grounded. Like whenever I'm doing a talk, I'm always like, look, don't listen to a word I say. If you don't feel me, then don't, then leave it alone. If you don't feel the hair on your arm stand up, if you don't feel it in your core or in your heart when I'm speaking, then it's probably not for you, right? There has to be a visceral kinetic connection. And that's how we know that we're speaking sort of through the lens of God, right? Or through the mouthpiece of God, because it's coming from our heart or our soul. And I think we recognize the divinity in someone by their presence. And the power of a teacher or a leader is it's under God's authority. It's not under our own, right? So for me, a man is a protector and a provider. We always talk about that, but he's also a priest to some degree, right? The divine masculine is a priest because he's ushering men back home. He's not the guru, right? He's not the authority, but he may have divine authority bestowed on him by God. And this goes for women too, a divine feminine, right? The priest and the priestesses who can now say, look, I'm just a guide here to show you a path back home. Doesn't have to be through Christ. It could be through your own avenue. But here's one avenue that worked for me, and I'm a changed man because of it. And the more divine masculine we have in the world, the more true, powerful men we'll have. Because whenever a group of men come together, there's power. And sometimes that's tyrannical power, but it's
Mhm.
power. And so, what can men do when they actually have God in their heart and they get together 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000 men on a mountain? A tremendous amount of things. I mean, we could build skyscrapers in months in this city where I'm from, right? So, how do we build a ladder to God? By raising the consciousness of other men around us, by raising boys from a young age, right? This is really important. So I believe I'm having a child in October with my wife, first one, 48 years old, because I had to heal, right?
Mhm.
And I believe all parents should start their children on the right road in life by making them first proficient in contacting God and in doing all things with God consciousness, right? Imagine we protected their intuition. Imagine we protected their channel to God. And Christ says it in the Bible. Only those who are like children will return to the
Mhm.
kingdom of God. Does that mean we're going to go jump in puddles as adults? Not necessarily, but it does mean that we have to have this essence, this purity within us. I made a lot of mistakes that took away my purity, right? Sins, if you will. And that's okay because God forgives. But I had to go through a process of purification so that I could become more like a child and actually have a little authority to lead men.
Okay, so I wanna talk about that, the process of purification. But first, what comes to mind is, I think culturally, we have been really down on men. Like, men are dominators, toxic masculinity, women, we can do it ourselves, we don't need a man. there's been a lot of that, since I was in my 20s. It started a long time ago. And so that really doesn't work, that, that men are bad, we don't need them. That really doesn't work, but it has permeated our culture. And so there is this idea, you mentioned power, and there's different kinds of power. There's this power over and having the power come through you, completely different things. And so a lot of men think they're being men by being, dominating and expressing their power. But you're creating an avenue and saying that's really the wrong track. So we need to help our kids uh, harness the power within them, and understand and allow it to come through them, and understand that's not them, but they are like vessels for the power of God. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think overall, children are completely cut off from God.
Hmm.
We live in a very secular society. So, not many children, they're either put into the the avenue of church, like you were, where you're learning your rosary and you're learning all that kind of stuff. You're getting confirmed and all that stuff, but it's kind of a thing you do like school. But to actually cultivate that natural ability that every child has. They say they come directly from God, right? They just came from God. And then we try to beat it out of them. So how do we do this? I mean, you can do this with your child, but it feels like we kind of need a revolution of this.
Mm. Well said. Revolution. Yeah. I don't know. Right. Like I'll find out in a few months. Right. I don't want to speak as an authority on
An
it because
authority.
I'm not a dad yet. Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that the only permanent happiness in life can be found through God. You see it sometimes, like when you see like these choirs singing and stuff. There's like a bliss when people are inspired in spirit. Right. You see it like, and that's like I don't know any other way to get there. I've never experienced it in any. I haven't had that bliss in any other aspect of life. Only through the creation of life. People talk about it when I had my child, right? Through a deep, profound experience of love, through praising and music and being around community where everyone is co-conspiring around God, right? So I think that's for me a fundamental truth is the only real permanent happiness in life can be found in communion with God, right? So if that is true, and that's true for maybe some of your listeners, then why don't we protect that channel for our children? And I don't know anybody that's done this in my personal life that was like, look, I'm having a kid, and yes, I want them to be educated. Yes, I want them to be, have all these other virtues that get you through life more easily. But I want to teach them to be God centered from the moment they're born. And I want to protect their personal relationship with God. And I want to teach them how to pray and meditate every day. I never met anyone like that. Have you?
No, I just love that so much though. I just love it. I mean, it really rings true. And you use the word protect, which I think is really lovely. You can protect what's already there, as opposed to spoil it. Our culture spoils it. We spoil it with all the media and all the messaging, uh, and just being disconnected ourselves from God. So I just love that idea to protect that natural connection. It's so beautiful. Okay, so let's get back to your process of purification. Can you share anything about that?
Yeah, so I think I alluded to it earlier, right? I think that the vessel needs to be cleansed, right? And what I learned is a lot of the stuff I was doing was superficial and shallow, and I thought I was healed. But really, we really have to go deep and ask, like, for example, who needs to be forgiven? Like we think we forgive, but my definition of forgiveness is you love the person more now than ever before, right? So I know I've forgiven somebody where I recognize that what they did to me was for me and it was a mistake that they made. And maybe it was an assignment in some, who knows, previous life, right? But I know that it was for me so that I could alchemize what that is and become a truly powerful person that could reach my potential. And therefore, I love that person for being my greatest teacher. I love them more than I ever loved them before. Versus, you know what? I'm fine. I'm over it. I forgive them. It's like, have you? Have you really made contact with your heart? Have you really understood that that perhaps was a soul contract and that person was in your life to make you who you truly are? So this is just an example, like forgiveness, right? Um, the removal of old patterns. When I moved into this new life, more of this God-centered life, my old identity would not let me go there. It was like this, literally my body was getting torn apart energetically and even physically. The anxiety that came from it, because my ego is like, we can't leave. Who are we if we don't make money and sleep with women? Who the hell are we? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't recognize myself, and this is terrifying. But we really do need to shed. We really need to step away from that old life, all the beliefs, all the identity that we've stacked onto ourselves, all the fears, all the doubts, all the finger pointing, all that needs to go, so that truly when we look at our inner world, we could say, it's clean. There's nothing pulling on me. There's nothing keeping me stuck, keeping me sick, keeping me anxious, keeping me depressed. I can see the world for the beauty that it is. I can see the world for the gift that it is. I can be calm and centered even when those triggers come, because they will. Mom and dad is going to trigger us. Our families are going to trigger us, right? So I think we know by the state of our inner worlds. And in that relaxed vessel, then we can begin to make contact with God. I feel like a lot of people just think that connecting with God is just, oh, anybody could do it at any time. Not in my experience. In my experience, like I wasn't connecting to anything, even when I was praying, because there was so much noise internally. So it's the peaceful, restful vessel that can begin to actually hear and feel and experience, as you said, right? The connection with God. So the purification process is real. And it's not till we get to a certain threshold that we can start actually communing, conspiring, building, and creating a new life for ourselves.
That's beautiful. So is that what Raised by Men is about?
Yeah, Raised by Men is like, hey, I don't want you guys to go through, 40 plus years of this. If we have a badass group of men who have gone through this to some degree for you, right? And can help you move through this process quickly, because we need you. I tell my men this all the time. Hey man, I need you, right? Go through your process, heal. But just so you know, you got a band of brothers that can hold you up and walk through the fire with you, because we've already done that. So I think having a guide in life, having mentors in life, having brotherhoods and sisterhoods are so critical. We need help. We can't lone wolf this life.
Yeah, and you also talk about, like, the father wound and sacred partnership. Can you mention a little bit about what that is? Is that something that's part of the purification process to heal the father wound?
It is, because you talked about women's sentiment towards men,
Uh-huh.
Carol, and I'm like, whenever I hear a woman say something like that, I'm like, okay, so what did your father do to you?
Yeah.
What did your uncle do to you, or what did your ex do to you? It doesn't represent all men, but I totally understand where you're coming from, right?
Yeah.
So the father wound is real, and the mother. How do I say this? The mother wound is real too, but the father wound. There's a lot of disappointment in the world around the dad, and I get it, because like, who's teaching us as men? Who's teaching us the faculties to be emotionally available, to be emotionally fluent, to be present, right? Like, it's something that has to be cultivated. Masculinity is not something that we're born with. I would argue femininity is something that you're born with.
Mm.
You can protect it, you can preserve it. It's the women that have become too masculine that men are like, no, thank you, but I understand why they become masculine. But what men are saying subconsciously is, hey, bring back that femininity.
Mhm.
I know it's there. And what women are saying is, hey, build that masculinity, cultivate that masculinity. I know it's there. And how do you do that? Who's teaching us? If our dads aren't teaching us, if my only model for manhood and masculinity was my dad, and he didn't really show up the way I needed him to, then where do I go? I'm going to just repeat it or completely rebel against it. But either way, it's not healthy and it's not centered.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a forgiveness work to be done there as well. And, it's interesting you talk about that. I love men. I've always loved men. I had 3 brothers, I had a sister, and I majored in engineering before I became a minister, and I was around men all the time, and I just have always understood men. Men are pretty easy to deal with. Women are really
Yeah.
complicated, and I think it might be because of my relationship with my father. I had a really good relationship with my father, and, I can see how that has permeated my life because 'cause I've never complained about men. But I do know that there's something, really missing in the world now with the protective male. And I think some of it is the lack of fathers in the home.
Mm.
I think. I remember a long time ago, this is back in the early 2000s, I used to listen to Dr. Laura on the radio back before there were podcasts and all that kind of stuff, long, long time ago, and she always said that if you're a single mom, that you had to find somebody for your children, not just boys, but for your children, some male figure in your life. It could be your father, it could be an uncle, it could be a friend, some male figure who could be that father figure for your children. And that was really a strong message that she had at the time, and I think it was to help cultivate that, or not have that father wound, the missing father, is something that we're always looking for. But what do you think about that? There's a lot of our structure is okay without there being fathers in the home.
Oh, I think it's a huge mistake to believe that we'd be okay without dads in the home. To your point, I think Dr. Laura's advice, and I remember her, by the way, she was great. Um, yeah, she she's right. Like, in my experience, because before, when I was single, I dated some single moms, right? And uh, the children that were healthy in those with those single moms had grandfathers, uncles around, other
Mhm.
men that were really involved in their life. And the ones that were unhealthy had the single mom did everything herself and thought, to your point, that she doesn't need men, which is an incredibly flawed belief. Comes from pain. I understand it. But wow, the world needs men. Wow. Like, I won't even say too much about it because it's common sense, but like, the wars that we sometimes have to fight, the sewage work, the sanitation work, the plumbing, the construction, like all these jobs, we need men. We need men, and we need strong, healthy men. Where we're failing as men, not all of us, is the emotional aspect.
Yeah.
Because we're carrying men carry this burden, right? Of how do I take care of my family? How do I pivot into this domesticated life, right? How do I, sacrifice everything I have for my family? And for some men, it's so overwhelming that they run away, you know, and they're just like, I can't deal with this pressure. And it's a burden that there's no excuse for that, but it's a burden that as a man, I've felt in my life, oftentimes, right? And I was a runner. I ran from relationships, intimacy, responsibility because I was scared. And I think the solution is like, hey, instead of like calling men toxic,
Mhm.
let's give them an opportunity to speak and express themselves. Because if women maybe understood it more and gave at least a platform for men to speak about it without feeling weak, for example, then I think we could get through it. But if I, as a father, if I don't raise my son that way to say, hey, look, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to feel stress. I'm going to teach you how to step into it in spite of your fear because you can do it and you're capable. I'm going to teach you how to be a strong man. I'm not going to teach you not to cry. I'm
Mm.
not going to teach you just to be stoic. I'm not going to teach you to be performative and fake it and put on a mask your whole life. I'm going to teach you to feel it and still get out there on the stage because that's what strong men do.
Oh, I love that, and I think that, I think women are mistaken when they're like, "I can do it all. I don't need a man." Boy, was I raised with that. I'm not saying for my family, but certainly the rise of the women's movement. It was kind of popular, and men start wars, and men are the root of all evil. There's so many complaints about men. But what we're talking about, that is the man that's not balanced, the man that hasn't been taught to connect and to receive from God and to be a servant in that way and to be protective, and to be that force in the world, not the dominating force. And I think that's just been collapsed. Whoever started to define men with the domination, like everything was fine until men started dominating, that's not because of men, it's because of the way men have been socialized. And so we're looking at restoring that, because the divine masculine is something else entirely. And I love that the wayshower is Jesus. How did he live his life? And if you watch it, every step of his life is showing you how to do it and how to deal with adversity. What do you do when all your friends betray you? What do you do when everyone leaves? What do you do when people wrongly accuse you? What do you do when you're accused of something you didn't even do? These are the things we do. What do you do when you're facing death? All of it. He showed the masculine and well, all of us. I think he showed all of us how to deal with adversity, but he did show that divine man. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's such an interesting point you bring up. Because through all of that, and I bring this up in my men's group, it's like here's Christ's journey, here's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and here's you. It's all
Yeah.
the same.
It's all the same.
And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, like everything not of love is nonsense. And through all those things that he experienced, what did he do? He just kept choosing love
Yes.
in every instance, in every circumstance. And that is profound,
Yes.
because that is what makes us superhuman, is embodying love in every moment. And it's incredibly difficult. I am not there. But what a beautiful goal to strive to, right? And one last thing on the comment about judging men or making these comments, right? It's okay if you feel that way, but acknowledge it comes from a wound, and also acknowledge as a woman that the likelihood of you meeting a conscious, loving man, if that energy is running through you, is nearly impossible.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's a resentment underneath those statements, and it has to be addressed.
Yeah, otherwise you keep attracting what you dislike. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You'll attract,
Exactly.
so you relive that wound. Yeah. Let's talk about rites of passage, because I've always felt that our society dropped rites of passage, centuries ago, and I think it's something that's really missing. What is it that takes a boy to manhood? There used to be these rites of passage. You might go out on a vision quest or something like that. Do you think that's important? And if so, is that something you're trying to recreate in your work?
Yeah, I think it's important, Carol. I really do. I think there's something around being around other men, especially elder men. You feel that presence, right? That they've been through their own internal wars, that can now say, it's time. I'm ready to guide you, right? And that could be, it always has to be in nature. I really believe that. I think, when I was running retreats early on, I was like, I got to plan this, I got to plan that. And then I bring them out in nature and I could step aside. It's amazing. You put them in front of a fire, you put them in some cold water, right? You put them under the stars, and things just happen. So I think when you have a council of men who are willing to orchestrate those type of meaningful ceremonial events with younger men, this is an unforgettable part of your timeline, right? I think here in the United States, there's no real definitive timeline.
Mhm, mhm.
When you look back at your life, you go, what were the monumental aspects of my life? No one even talked to me about the birds and the bees. So I didn't know about, I went from a preteen to a teenager, figuring it out, got married at 27. Maybe I got divorced at 38. Like, where was the actual love and care and
Mhm,
defining moments that helped me get from stage one to stage two to stage three? And as soon as we make something ceremonial, it becomes so impactful. It creates that thick, bold line on the timeline, right? And it's like, hey, we're here for you. We're here for you to get baptized in Christ at 30 or 40 years old. What's that going to be like on a mountain surrounded by 50 men and an ordained priest, for example? Would I forget that? And someone asked me, if you asked me on a podcast, 20 years from now, what was the most, incredible part of your life? I'd say something like that.
Mhm,
A
mhm.
rite of passage, baptized as an adult, marriage later in life to a godly woman. Why? Because all these things were so intentional, and in a sense, they were designed for me by other loving men, or in some cases, women, right? If we're talking about sisterhoods, that put this thing together for me. And it becomes real because we invite God into the space and we invite intention into the space. And therefore, we're changed alchemically again because of that experience that was curated for us. So I don't know I'm a boy to a man in the United States when one day I open up my laptop and I have unlimited free pornography
Mm,
and nobody's there and I'm in private. And for years and years and years, this becomes my hobby
mhm.
alone in a basement looking at women that aren't real women. And now I go out into this world and this is what I'm looking for. And then women go, all men want is sex. And I go, well, yeah, that's true, but women are also affected by pornography. So now we're creating this, not to go on a tangent, but it's important that we have guardrails in life and ceremonies in life and we can take them through a direct channel. Because then it's harder for men to vacillate. It's harder for boys to go off on these, you know, unhealthy habits.
Yeah, there's so many directions I can go with this one.
Yeah.
One thing I don't want to lose track of is these rites of passage and these ceremonies are important for everyone. I think about how like women, young girls, when the day when they start menstruating, that is a day that is very confusing to a young girl, and they're kind of around their peers, and they're taught how to, use feminine products. But it's like this is something to create a ceremony around, this is something that, you have become a woman, but we don't do that. We don't do that. We just kind of make it another day. And
Yeah.
I think these things are pivotal. And I think that they really can define what being a woman is or what being a man is, if like you say you draw that line and you can look back on that. Because I even remembered, I was not the best mom. I did my best at being a mom, but I didn't create a space for my daughters when they went through that. But I do remember, at least I remember one or two of them being sad, like they're sad, like they just lost something. I just lost my childhood, so what do we do with that? It shouldn't, I shouldn't say that it shouldn't be that, but it could be something different than that. And we just, as a society, I think it's all rooted in what you said. We're not bringing God in. We're not bringing God into these momentous times and surrounding them with women or surrounding people with men and creating this now you've reached this. It's so important, and I just hope that we're able to resurrect this. I know that the Gen Zs are having a lot of trouble with, I think it's Gen Zs, with pornography, because they were raised with that computer and it just being so accessible to them at a very young age. And there's record numbers of them turning to like Catholicism.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? It's like they're
Yes.
looking for something that has meaning because this stuff doesn't. But this is all that I've known. And where is meaning? And so they're finding meaning in the Catholic Church of all places. I think it's fascinating.
Yes. It's very well said. Yeah, it to me it all goes back to God,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
like we're as I'm going through, I mean, you're a mother, right? So but as I'm going through this process, I'm like, how I'm shocked that people don't believe in God. I'm shocked by it.
Yeah, I know.
Because
Just look at a
when you
flower.
now look at it, right, look at
Look
a
at the grass.
flower, look at the sky, look at the grass, look at the birth, like the miracle of birth
I know,
and
conception. Oh my gosh.
the complexities that have to go into it. Like if you really look at this, so when people go, I don't believe in God, right? And I'm like, that's cool. I'm not here to convince anybody, but I'm like, do you understand how your own body works? Like, can you tell me how like all your organs work with each other and all this, right? And usually the answer is no, because I don't. I don't even know myself. I can't even explain to you how my body works.
Mhm.
I can't even explain to you, I could probably describe 50 species of animals and there's tens of thousands, right? I don't know anything. So for me to think that I should understand God is insane. So all I have, and the truth is, as I've gotten older, I used to have a lot of knowledge about things, you know, and now I realize I don't know anything, and I stopped consuming. I
You're
stopped
like
consuming, and I was
yeah.
really boring. I was like listening to myself, and I'm like, I'm bored listening to myself. I know all these facts, but I know nothing. So when I speak now, I want to be felt. Like I said earlier, I just want people to know that, like, hey, I experienced this thing, and I'm not crazy, and I feel God every waking moment. And I wake up and I meditate every day, and I cry. I cry out of like joy, and I cry from feeling the presence of God within me, and that's available to every one of us. I'm not special, and I my prayer every day is make me more like Christ, and that's a dangerous prayer because literally every day my heart softens, and as it softens, I become happier and more peaceful. And I just the reason I wanted to do this podcast with you and talk to anyone, right, who has influence and audience is because if you doubt God, you live in fear your whole life. And when you choose love, you experience who you really are and who you can be. And our purpose, men talk about purpose all the time, is to know ourselves as God. And the only thing worth pursuing is the pursuit of God. There's
Mhm.
nothing else to search for. We're not going to find love when we search. We're not going to find happiness when we search. But when we pursue God, we find peace and we find love.
Amen. It's not that difficult an idea, but it's the last idea that comes to people's minds, you know? It's
Mm.
well said. So, well, let's just talk about. We're coming up on our hour. I want to talk about exactly what you're doing. Like, if someone was interested in what you're talking about, what would they do? And on your website, you talk about nature, spirituality, and masculinity method. Is that something you can kind of describe a little bit here?
Yeah, it's called NSM. So nature, spirituality, and masculinity. Those three things go together, right? And I want to get men out in nature. I want to get them in their body, and I want to get them to understand what real masculinity is because it's rarely ever defined, right? And what I'm doing now is I'm building a spiritual brotherhood. So I've always run men's groups, and that was, hey, come on in, let's check in, right? How's things? What's going on with your relationship? And that's amazing. But now I am building a group. It's called the Brotherhood of Light, and that group is going to be for men who actually are ready to be in service. So they've already gone through a big part of their own healing. So it's not about getting, Bobby out of bed in the morning because he's depressed and anxious, right?
Mhm.
There's a time and a place for that, and we need those groups. But this is a group of men who I would say are qualified. The men I'm talking about that are clear,
They've done
that
the
are
work.
conscious. They've done the work. They're healed, and now they're saying, "Where can I help? Where can I use my talents, my resources, my network to raise the greater good?" To contribute to the world in a positive way because a lot of people are out there with picket signs fighting against the systems.
Yeah.
I admire those people in one way, but in another way I'm like, you think a sign's going to do it? A sign, right? I see them spending hours on signs. If we really want to change the world, of course we have to change ourselves first, right? That's how we
Mhm.
change the world. And if it ended there, you had an amazing life. You helped society. You were a healthy cell in the body of Christ. And then the next level, I think, is saying, forget about the old systems. We can't change it. But what we could do is build new systems.
Ah, I'm with you. Yes. Create something new.
Yes, create
Yeah.
something new. And eventually, if you create enough good, positive systems, the old ones will die.
Yeah, people go, "I want that. I don't want this." Yeah, I
Yes.
want what they're having. Yeah.
Yes. We need that contrast, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes we normalize the delusion and we're like, that's just the way it is. And it's like, yeah, but if we've formed real sisterhoods and real brotherhoods and brought people together and pooled our money, right? I'm sick of like I don't want to say I'm sick of it. I understand it, but a lot of people will have this huge influence, and then they do a master class and all the money goes in their pocket, or they do a retreat weekend and they make $50,000 and they walk away. Great. They deserve to make some money. But what would happen if we created a God fund where everybody in that sisterhood or everybody in that brotherhood, when they contributed their monthly dues or their annual dues, it went to a fund, and that fund invested and it grew and it created businesses, right? And it created franchises. And year over year, more money was put into this fund. And eventually, we have millions of dollars in that fund to do anything that we want, to help children come into this world in better ways, real birthing centers, to help people end their lives in better ways, right? Real centers for people to die gently.
Mhm.
We don't have that. We have systems that are broken, and we wonder why there's autism, and we wonder why there's children that have dysfunction the moment they're born. We're not bringing them in right, and we're not letting them leave right. So imagine franchises like this, new birthing centers, new death centers, just as an example. This is what men can do together. This is what women could do together. So the ethos of this whole conversation is we need communities. When we have communities centered around God, and we bring children into that community, what happens to those children? They got cousins and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and mothers and fathers, even if they're not biologically related. And they watch those people talk about God, embody God, build real businesses. And now this ascension is now happening right here on earth. We don't have to wait until the physical body dies.
Yeah, and I think also it'd be key to build new ways to educate.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because our education systems really, I believe, dumb us down and keep us like slaves to the existing system. That we can't create a new system if we are in the chute to become, slaves to the existing system. And that's really what it does. You became a slave. I've become a slave. I've been a slave where you graduate from college and now you're working for a corporation or something. And then now you're, yeah, hamster on the wheel making money. But all you did was exactly what they were guiding you into. Nothing really creative there. And so I can just envision, I love your vision. I'm excited about it. And I can just envision, absolutely completely different ways to do school, or not even call it school, but to educate our children and our adults so that we are free to really think and create. And, like you said, centered in God, we are so amazingly creative. What can we do with that? So many of us have been tamped down. I can feel it, been tamped down by those systems. So I love that you're creating something different. So let's just say somebody's listening now and they're like, gosh, I'm thinking my life doesn't have meaning. I've got the car, I've got the condo, I got the wife, I got whatever it is. But you know what? I'm just not feeling it. I don't feel that connection to God, and I don't really know what to do. And I keep doing what I'm doing, and I feel like I need to get off this wheel. What would you suggest they do first?
Oh, such a good question. Honestly, it's going to sound so simple, Carol. Breathe,
Uh huh.
slow down, and breathe. Because if the man that you're describing or the woman you're describing is anything like me, I never stopped. I never stopped to actually breathe. In fact, once I did, I was like, I don't breathe correctly. I'm a shallow breather. I'm
Hmm.
constantly nervous.
Hmm.
My nervous system is a wreck. My hands constantly shaking. I didn't even know until I stopped, paused. So I think that's the first thing is like, God appears in the silence. God appears in the breath. This is our spirit. We're not breathing. God is breathing us. And if we actually stopped to recognize that, we could say, oh, I could actually take control of my breath. So something's breathing me, even when I sleep. But if I stop and go, I meet God, and if I do that consistently, I build a relationship with God. And if I close my eyes and actually say, God, can you show me how to build a relationship with you? Because for 40, 30, whatever years, I never tried. And all I know is kneel, stand, sit in a church. you know?
If
So
that.
if that, right? So it's really amazing when we slow down, speaking as a native New Yorker, like this is not even in our dictionary, you know? Slow down, ask permission, start to breathe, start to check in with ourselves. And soon we might be asked to look at some dark stuff, some heavy stuff. And that's okay. That's what God is saying. When you want to build a relationship with me, it starts through your emotions. And if you
Mm.
have untapped emotions, unaddressed emotions, well, we're going to ask you to start to feel them, to acknowledge them, and to eventually move them through.
Yeah, there's not a shortcut to that.
No,
Yeah. So, do you do retreats and stuff?
I do.
Okay. So we'll have links to your retreats if you have any upcoming or anything else in the show notes. What else would you like to say before we close? Is there something that we didn't cover that you want to make sure that people know about you or about your work?
No, I
We covered
think,
a
I
lot.
just, we did. I really want to thank you for the opportunity, by the way. But, I think it's really, we talk about God a lot, and I know it's a big term for people. And I know sometimes people don't even like using the
That
G
word.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. But we're here because superhuman potential is real. It's the reality. When we talk about Christ, it's the reality of a Christed being. It's the superhuman potential. And we are so much more than what we think we are. And there's so much more, there's such a better way to live coming from a guy that experienced both. There's a better way to live. And if we give our heart permission to expand, because we can measure the heart, right? We could measure it. Like literally, someone who has an open heart, people could feel it blocks away. It's amazing. This is what makes us human, and it's what makes us divine. And if your only work in life was to just open your heart, it's the greatest decision we could ever make.
Yeah, I think if we all start doing that, then all the corporations are going to lose all their employees, and all the government workers are going to stop working.
Yeah, it's dangerous for them.
Then we've got to have something that they can join that's different than that. So they're all
Yes,
going to
they'll
leave.
have to. They'll have no choice.
I know. I love the vision. I love the vision. There's something I do agree. I think we've created this contrast so that we can like get so fed up with the way things are and so fed up with the divisions and so fed up with what looks like evil in the world that we're going to be like, I'm done with that. We've got to choose something else. So, oh gosh, Robert, thank you so much. I love the work you're doing. I love how you shared your journey. I think it's so important. And I think, I don't know how many men or women are listening, but whatever women are listening, share this with your men. I think it's just such an important message. And we just have such an amazing opportunity to become fully human and to express the divinity within us in new ways. So thank you for everything.
It was an honor, Carol. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you everyone for joining us. I now close the Spiritual Forum.